Colonialism, not a one-sided story. It's crucial to remember that colonialism wasn't just something that happened to people. Indigenous communities weren't passive victims. They were active agents who fought back against oppression and sought to protect their cultures, lands, and ways of life. Their stories are filled with courage, resilience, and determination. Resistance, a multitude of tactics. Resistance to colonialism came in all shapes and sizes. It wasn't always about armed rebellion, although those definitely happened. Resistance could be cultural, political, or economic. It could be open and in your face or subtle and under the radar. Armed uprisings. Many indigenous groups took up arms to defend their homelands and fight for their independence. The Ashanti people of West Africa fiercely resisted British colonization, as did the Lakota Sioux in North America, who battled against the westward expansion of the United States. These are just two examples of countless armed struggles that erupted across the globe. Cultural preservation as a weapon. Indigenous people also fought back by holding on to their languages, traditions, and cultural practices. This was a way of maintaining their identity and heritage in the face of attempts to wipe them out or assimilate them into the colonizers' culture. It was a way of saying, we are still here and we will not forget who we are. Political maneuvering. Some indigenous leaders engaged in clever political negotiations and diplomacy to try to shield their people's rights and interests. They formed alliances with rival colonial powers to gain leverage or use their knowledge of local customs and politics to outsmart the colonizers. Everyday acts of defiance. Even small acts of rebellion, like refusing to learn the colonizers' language, secretly practicing traditional rituals, or sabotaging colonial infrastructure, were important ways of resisting. These acts may seem insignificant on their own, but collectively they could erode the colonizers' control and keep the spirit of resistance alive. Indigenous agency, more than just survival. Despite the enormous obstacles they faced, indigenous people often found ways to exercise agency and shape their own futures. They built new communities, adapted to changing circumstances, and found clever ways to resist and thrive. Holding on to cultural identity. Indigenous communities used storytelling, music, dance, and other art forms to keep their cultural identity alive. They passed down their knowledge and traditions from one generation to the next, ensuring that their cultures would not be erased. Masterful negotiators. Some indigenous leaders were skilled negotiators who were able to secure concessions and protections for their people from colonial powers. They used their understanding of local customs and politics to their advantage, sometimes even playing colonial powers against each other. Strength in numbers. Indigenous groups often formed alliances with each other to resist colonialism more effectively. They shared information, resources, and military strategies, creating networks of solidarity that spanned vast distances. Adaptation and innovation. Indigenous people were often forced to adapt to new circumstances and find creative ways to survive under colonial rule. They adopted new technologies, developed new economic strategies, and found ways to maintain their communities in the face of adversity. The importance of indigenous voices. Colonialism was a complex process with varying impacts on different communities. There is no single indigenous perspective on colonialism. However, listening to the voices of indigenous people is crucial for understanding the full story of colonization and its aftermath. Indigenous historians, activists, and artists are reclaiming their histories and challenging the dominant narratives about colonialism. By listening to their stories, we can gain a deeper appreciation for the resilience, creativity, and agency of indigenous peoples in the face of oppression. We can also learn valuable lessons about the importance of cultural diversity, self-determination, and social justice.